Alright, develop a proposed roadway profile. Chapter 10. Okay, so in the last chapter, 9 there, we developed a proposed roadway alignment. So now we're ready to develop our proposed roadway profile. Okay, so let's go ahead and just use the same information that the actual project used, I guess. So if you don't still have it up, let's go back to your student folder, CAD, Documents, Final PS&E, and go ahead and open up that PDF. And let's go to sheet number 39. And let's go ahead and just take a look at the roadway profile that we used on the actual project, and we're going to write some of this information down. So let's see. We're actually just going to start at the beginning of the alignment. So I think what we want to know first is that we tied into the existing. We came off the existing at a 0.15% grade. And that then was extended onto the next page here. And our, I guess it'd be second VPI would be, it's going to be at station 109 plus 35. We don't necessarily need to write down the elevation because we're going to set the constraint based on that percent. And then notice that the grade then changes. The ahead grade is negative 0.72, and that extends down to the next VPI, which is, and we're writing all this down, station 117 plus 55. And then we tie back into the existing. We'll just tie into the existing whatever it is here, but it looks like when I originally did this, it was plus 2.11, so it's going to be very similar to that, I'm sure. And really, that's the only information that we really need at this point in time. Well, maybe the lengths of the vertical curve that was used. If you don't have standards set up in ORD where it will tell you automatically what vertical curve length you need for your design speed, then you actually type it in. And so I think we're just going to type it in here. So that second VPI had a vertical curve length of 110, and then the first VPI had a length of 90. And that's really the only information that we're going to need to develop this proposed profile in ORD. Okay, the way that we go about it is it's actually kind of similar to developing a horizontal alignment. The vertical alignment or the profile tools are similar. Let's look up at our workflow. We're still in the Open Roads Modeling. We're in the Geometry tab, and then we're under the horizontal. Well, we're next to the horizontal, the one that we used in the last chapter. Next to that is vertical. So all of these tools from here to here are all for creating profiles or modifying profiles or working with profiles, in some way. And so the way that we do that is, again, unlike Geopack or any other software, the way that we develop a profile in ORD is to develop that profile in the same design file as the align or the alignment that we're working with. So because the proposed alignment is in the alignment design file, we're going to be working in that design file but in a separate profile model, if that makes any sense. Okay, so the way that we're going to open up that separate profile model is to click on the Open Profile Model button here. This is just one way of doing it. And then I drop down and I hover over that alignment, select that Plan View element, and then I just choose any of these windows. Okay, it shows 3. Now, if by chance you previously were working in view 3 with some other profile, let me show you what you can do in that case. You go over to the view attributes, and then notice towards the bottom it says models profile. So I could switch that, say, to default if I wanted to. Sometimes it's a little easier to get that particular view switched over to a different line or alignment that you're profiling. So now let's go ahead and we'll go back and do this kind of again. We'll go open profile model, click on the line. I'm going to select inside window 3, or I could have gone up to the window number up at the top. And so now you'll notice that that whole alignment highlights. You'll notice then that because I've got the existing terrain referenced and set as the active terrain, right? If I go up here into plan view, I'm just going to look at this a second. Remember, this is our active terrain, right? It says active terrain model up there. Okay, so because that was there, and even if, I think as long as it's referenced, even if it would have been, say, turned off where I can't even see it, it's still attached to the file. It's still the active terrain. So when I open back up that window 3, that's the reason why I'm seeing an existing profile. So unlike other software, you don't have to really run anything to create an existing profile. As long as you have the existing terrain referenced to your design file that the line is in, and it's set as the active terrain, then in that case you will automatically get that profile. And like we said in the past, if for some reason at this point we wanted to see that alignment show up, I could hover over it and I could make the existing the active profile if I wanted to. But in this case, you might do that initially, but ultimately you're probably going to want your whatever proposed profile to be the active profile. And we can have multiple alternates in this case, but the only one that's going to be used in this modeling process that we're working towards is whichever profile you call your active profile. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We're just going to jump up to profile line between points, and if you like, go ahead and just data point, and let's just throw a line out there just to kind of get used to this process. Now, if your line didn't automatically show with the right attributes, and in this case with using ORD, you're going to want the proper feature definition, right? And so we use, we pulled out that active, or I should say the feature definition toolbar. We make that active. We go over here to that little triangle. We look through the hierarchy, which should look pretty familiar to you. It's not that drastically different than GeoPack was. But it's under profiles, ground profile, and proposed ground profile. We want to turn that on, so that now that, anytime we do any work inside that profile view, that profile is going to be using that feature definition. And notice that I accidentally turned off use it, so it just went back to the default. So you can see that you want to make sure that use active feature definition is turned off. Now, if by chance you place a line out there, know that you can always go back if you wanted to, and if you had that work done, it's like, well, I don't want to redo all this work just to get the feature definition set. Then a couple different ways you could do that. If I go back to standards, set feature definition, I could go back and path out to that proper feature definition here, click on it, and then change it after the fact. All right. Now let's go ahead and develop that profile. Now that we know just a little bit about some super basics here of profiling. Okay, just like with the horizontal alignment, we like to use Civil AccuDraw. And so if you don't see this dialog or toolbox up, I guess you call it. Let's go back up to our geometry tab, click on civil toggles, and it should have popped up this box for you. And then when you do so, go ahead and just turn it on. And sometimes it doesn't really fully expand. If it does, I seem to kind of go back and forth between turning it on here or turning it on up above. But you will get it to, it should expand out to at least show the tools that are appropriate for the type of work that you're doing. Because remember on a previous chapter we talked about at the top of the window, whatever's dark blue is going to be kind of the model that you're working in, right? So because my profile model is dark blue, when I clicked on Civil AccuDraw, it automatically displays the tools that I need to do, vertical alignment work. And okay, so let's go ahead and go up to place a profile between points. And then, looks like I'm getting some messages. I'm just now sharing out with other employees within our company how I'm going to make available these videos. So that's why you keep seeing that the pop up over there. But let's keep moving along. Okay. So because I have Civil AccuDraw turned on, notice that it's tracking the station for me. I'm going to go up here and again click that draw profile between points. And one thing I'm not seeing happen, it's showing station and offset, notice, but really that should be showing me station and elevation, because see, this tool up here is the Z value. So let's see if I can get that to change there. It was kind of stuck in offset from when I was working horizontally. If that ever happens, just kind of go back, select another tool, and select the one that says Z value. Now I drop down and notice that that's the choices that I'm getting, station and Z, which is what I want for a proposed profile. Okay, now I know that I want to start at the very beginning of the alignment. I'm going to, in this particular case, I want to tie into the existing PGL. So you might want to make sure that you, in your snaps, that your key point is turned on. And then when I get to the very beginning, notice it's going to snap for me. So it's going to start exactly where I want it to. And then there's various constraints that I could set as I'm developing my proposed profile. And in this case, we know what the VPI station is going to be. We know what the slope is going to be. So let's go ahead and just type in that station that you wrote down, 109 plus 35. And so now that's the one constraint that I have set. But the slope could be anything, right? So what I could do on this point, I could change it after the fact, or I can use my tab button. I'm going to tab down to length, and if I hit my right arrow, it's going to set those parameters to slope, which we know what the slope is. So that's, we know that. So we can set whatever constraints that we know in advance. So let's go negative 0.15. And then at that point, with those constraints, there's only one solution. So that's why I kind of locked it in there. So I data point to accept. And so that gave me exactly, what I wanted there. Now, to continue, I'm going to have to snap to the end of the line. If I've got a bunch of VPIs, what I probably would have wanted to have done is gone up and turned on link. And then and also you can decide if you want, do you want that persist snaps rule set, yes or no? And really what that means Yeah, I think when you initially get started, it's probably easier to leave it off because you might get some results that you don't want. As once you use this more often, you will definitely like this. Let me tell you the idea behind this. Um, just like we had talked when we first got started here, everything you will do and you will continue to grow, in this, you're not a draftsman, right? You're designing with intent, and which ultimately means you draft with intent. So what will happen in the long run is everything that you do, think about what kind of constraint is fixed. Almost every job that you work on, something will get changed, right? And you end up redrafting the whole job, right? Well, that's really one of the biggest advantages of ORD is that because you're building in this intent, if something changes, everything changes with it. So like in this case, what did I do? How did I get started here? I snapped, right? So I snapped, what did I snap to? I snapped to the beginning of that chain. I'm snapping to that existing terrain. And so if I had my persist snaps on, think about what that would mean. That's locking that in. I'm telling ORD, my profile is not really static. My profile in that case would be, I want my proposed profile to start right at the beginning of the existing. Now what happens if I went through and we had a pickup survey and that existing terrain changed? Well, now ORD knows that, well, you told me with design intent, you had your persist snaps on that you wanted to start right at the existing ground. So then you may end up seeing that your proposed profile adjust, and you're like, well, how did that happen? And that's, well, you had your snaps on with persist on, right? And you can apply that to like everything that you do. We saw that in the beginning of the class when we pulled a 90 off of another line. We rotated that line, and that secondary line followed it, and it kept that constraint of 90 degrees, and that was my design intent, right? So, being you're most likely beginners getting started, I would recommend probably turning that persist snaps off in the beginning. I often turn that off, and I leave links on, and because sometimes you end up with results that you did not intend because you kind of forgot about the whole design intent thing. So it's nice that we do have the ability to turn that off. Okay, so let's continue. I'm going to snap to the end of that profile, and then we said the second VPI station is station 117 plus 55. Again, I'm going to hit tab, right arrow key, and we said that our ahead grade is negative 0.72. We'll go ahead and set that constraint. Again, there's only one solution here, so I'm going to data point to accept. And then we said to finish off the job that we want to just tie back into the existing. I'm looking at this, and what you're seeing. Why are you seeing these this craziness in this? It would have to do with if you look back at the survey, when the survey was processed, the shots that were taken, the existing terrain probably needs to be cleaned up a little bit. There's some kind of shot here that was off, and that may or may not be within my limits. And of course, the shots, the density of the survey becomes very important also, I would say, with open roads, because you do end up with segmented items, and then you might be tying into some station that you don't really want. So in many cases, it's more ideal to be more densified in our shots. But in any case, let's stay on point, and let's see. This is really nice, actually. That notice as I move my cursor in the profile view, it's showing me in the plan view exactly where that is in relation. And I know in this case that I'm going to tie it because we're already on the Indiana side over here. So I'm going to be tying in, somewhere around 118, 118.50, somewhere right around there. In fact, here, look, I can tell that there's a good solid shot right there on the existing. So why don't I go ahead and snap to that, and let's end the proposed profile there. Okay, so now I can go back and add in my vertical curves. I'm going to do that by going up to the arcs pull down. I'm going to select arc between elements, and this is real similar to like say a microstation horizontal fillet, I would compare it to. So arc between elements. Oh, actually that is incorrect. Disregard what I just said. Those are the horizontal tools. I do mix these up often, and obviously that would not work in a profile. Let's go over to the vertical tools under curves, and we're going to select profile curves from element, and it's going to be a parabolic curve. And then it says, do we want to trim the head or the back? Do we want to trim both? What do we, well, I guess it didn't say both. Do we want to trim or extend the back? And so I'm going to select that back grade. I'll data point to accept. Oh, looks, hang on here. I am in the wrong command, I think. Hang on. Let me reset out of this and take a look at what I'm doing here. Okay, here we go. I told you to use the wrong tool. I'm not going to start over. I'm just going to continue here. I'm going up to curves, profile curves between elements, and I'm going to drop down to the bottom one, profile curve between elements. And it's going to bring up this dialog, and I said I wanted a parabola, right? So if I clicked here, I can make sure that that is set. And then under trim extend, I want both to be set. And I don't want any offset, so I'm going to set those both to 0. So it says pick your back element on your offset. Up here at the top it was toggled, so I'm just going to data point to accept. Pick my secondary line, data point to accept. And then here I can either dynamically set the length of my profile, or I can type that in. And if I was to look back at those original plans, let's see, what did we use? Oh, that's right. We actually wrote that down. Remember, it was 90 feet. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's type in 90. And then we're going to accept that solution, accept both, and I believe the head one was 110. So we're going to create that vertical curve the same way. Select the back, data point, 0 offset, select the secondary, accept it, and then we could either dynamically place this anywhere, which I'll just to do it differently and show you that you can still change this after the fact. I'll go ahead and just accept whatever was there, just to show you that you don't need any special tools or anything. We can go back and just with our element selector, we can select it, and we're going to get 2 pieces of information here. The one on top is the length of the vertical curve, and then the one on the bottom is the K value. And so as you're developing your proposed profile, you may want to look up the K value and set it by that, and then maybe adjust the length so it's a nice even number. In this particular case, we know what we ended up using for a vertical curve length, so I'm just going to type in the 110, and that was what we wanted. And then at that point we just tied back into existing, right? Alright, so now I've got my proposed profile developed. So very similar to horizontal, geometry, I'm going to go ahead and complex this proposed profile. So I go up to my vertical tools, complex geometry. Again, like horizontal tools, if I have automatic set, I just click on that first line, make sure the arrow is going left to right. It highlights to show me what will be complexed together, and then I data point to accept. So now I can drop down, and if I select that profile, you see the whole profile is going to highlight, right? And even at this point, I can still make changes, even though it's already complexed. At least I can make changes to what is in orange. Now, if I wanted to make changes, I think I can right-click still. I can right-click on the alignment, and then that'll change me from modifying the vertical curves to changing the grades. So note that you can change this later. And what's amazing, I know we're just getting started with this class, is that think about this. You've completed your design. You have cross sections. You have the model. You have everything you want. Everything's tied together. Remember. In fact, I could either develop a whole new profile and make that the active profile, or I could come in. I make a change to this profile. The whole job is going to update. It's pretty amazing, and but we're not quite there yet, so I'll try to stay on point. The last thing that I want to say about proposed profile is that we always want to make one of our profiles our active profile, so then that will show up in our 3D model. So I'm going to set that as active. I can go ahead and get out of that model. Again, if you want to see it in 3D, remember we can always hold that right mouse button down, Views, Plan 3D. And then now, not only do you see the existing profile in 3D, we also see the proposed profile. And so that, it's actually drawn exactly in space where it's at with the proper X, Y, and Z coordinate values. I could spin that around if I like. I don't know if you may be able to tell the vertical curves and that sort of thing. It's fairly flat, so you probably don't see too much relief there, but let's just go with that. Let's end chapter 10 at that point.